bombs. Please welcome Mr. Bill Gates. We also face a new threat that the next epidemic has a good chance of originating on a computer screen of a terrorist intent on using genetic engineering to create a synthetic version of the smallpox virus or a contagious and highly deadly strain of flu. So the point is that we ignore the strong link between health security and international security at our peril. Whether it occurs by the quirk of nature or at the hand of a terrorist, epidemiologists show through their models that a respiratory spread pathogen would kill more than 30 million people in less than a year. And there is a reasonable probability of that taking place in the years ahead.
You tried to warn us about this pandemic, and we didn't listen. What's the next thing you're warning us about that's going to happen 5 years from now that we're not listening to at the present?
Well, I didn't want to be right. What I wanted to do was...
I understand. I'm not saying you won. Everybody loses. Nobody wins with this. And I'm not saying this is not an end zone dance. I'm just saying, what else are we not listening to that we need to take action on now?
Well, the idea of a bioterrorist attack is kind of the nightmare scenario because they're a pathogen with a high death rate would be picked. Now, the good news is, I'm not trying to depress you, it's tough enough right now. Most of the work we're going to do to be ready for pandemic 2, I call this pandemic 1, most of the work we'll do to be ready for that are also the things we need to do to minimize the threat of bioterrorism.
I think an epidemic, either naturally caused or intentionally caused, is the most likely thing to cause, say, 10 million excess deaths. Either naturally caused or intentionally caused. Just
Now, how serious is this monkey flu? Not serious at all, because it's not true. See, the government likes to covertly test the emergency response system every once in a while to see how people mobilize, the authorities respond, and the public react.
Wait a minute, so this is just a drill?
Exactly. They do it all the time. You remember H1N1?
Yeah.
A drill. Remember SARS?
Yeah.
A drill. Y'all remember the bird flu?
Was a drill too?
No, that one was true. Don't mess with them birds.
There are over 300 billion birds in the world. That's 75 birds for every person.
Mom said the avian flu was already one of the world's deadliest viruses. In the third wave, the others modified it, made it unstoppable, and the birds spread it across the planet.
For the first time since foul plague was declared a global pandemic last year, health authorities say there's real hope a vaccine will be available within days. 45 million people have been infected across the globe, with more than 3.5 million killed by the virus.
We are continuing our coverage of a new and deadly infectious disease.
The virus has some genetic elements of the Nipah virus.
The care of these patients requires extraordinary effort.
We cannot and will not voluntarily take patients from other hospitals.
The creation and intentional release of the Clade X virus.
The impact of not doing something has lots of consequences.
We can't retreat from the rest of the world.
Continuity of government here cannot be overestimated.
A federal quarantine of this scale is unprecedented.
The question everywhere, when will there be a vaccine?
We have got to engage the private sector.
They know that we don't have a vaccine yet. They want vaccines to be prioritized.
I would not want to pull those people back.
And we need on the ground to be able to assure protection of our first responders.
This is a non-starter. I'm going to need these people. I got this feeling in a whole lot of other places.
What the world will look like when it's done is still very uncertain.
I'm trying to make specifically 3D printed cancer-fighting viruses. You can make really weak viruses that won't infect normal cells. We have defenses against viruses in our bodies. It shuts them down. But cancer cells are broken. And these viruses, when they infect a cancer cell, hack it, take it over, start producing more viruses, kill the cancer cell, and release more viruses in the body to go and kill more cancer cells. It actually hacks the cancer to become the drug plant. They're really quite sweet. They're called oncolytic viruses. I was inspired by this paper 10 years ago. It's actually by a famous genetic scientist, Craig Venter, and his scientific working partner, a guy named Ham Smith, a Nobel Prize winner. And they made the second synthetic virus in the world. Now, it's not a cancer-fighting virus. It's actually a bacteriophage called X174. And this is a diagram from that paper, but it's actually fairly simple. They basically designed the viral genome on computer. They printed the DNA synthetically, so there was no biology to start with. They printed the DNA, and then they booted that DNA and made virus particles. And it was a really big deal in 2003, but it only took them 2 weeks. It was expensive. I don't know how much, but they did it. So earlier this year, I decided to see if I could repeat that work without inventing anything, without having a Nobel Prize winner. This is the genome of X174. Today, 5 years ago, you could not print this genome very easily. It really took a lot of work. Today, we were able to model this virus quite easily. We were able to take that DNA code and actually send it off. Well, actually, we printed the virus as well, 3D printed, it's easy. But holding a virus in your hand is really cool. Some people actually thought this was infectious. Then I sent the DNA code to about a half dozen different DNA printer companies. And this company in particular was able to get the DNA to me really fast and really cheap and print the entire genome, which we booted in a small procedure in the lab and produced X174 virus. Wherever you see a spot here, that's where a synthetic virus is booted up. I did it in 2 weeks, which is, again, I didn't beat the time, but it was only $1,000 all in, and I'll never pay that much again because the cost of writing DNA is falling really quickly, just like the cost of reading DNA. So this is, as far as I know, the first synthetic virus Autodesk has ever produced. Caught a lot of attention. And now I just have to swap out the design to start making cancer-fighting viruses. We've been also working with other folks like Sean Douglas at UCSF, who's designing kind of a synthetic virus. He calls them cancer-fighting nanorobots, but these are essentially, fully artificial designs built on using synthetic DNA as well. They're quite powerful. So we're starting to see the day now where digital pharma is booting up. Where just with a laptop and some of the tools that are becoming available, you can actually make powerful drugs that once only drug companies could do at incredibly low costs. I think in the next 2 to 3 years, I should be able to make a virus for about $1.
Now that we know what's good and what's bad, let's print out the good ones.
This machine right here is really the innovative
piece of Cambrian This is the secret sauce, the DNA laser printer. And this machine will produce more DNA in a single run than is produced in all the machines in the world in an entire year.
Is this going to democratize this entire industry?
It means that anyone in the world is going to be able to be a genetic designer.
So what do you think the market is for this technology?
Total, if people just press print instead of copying from nature or ordering the synthetic DNA as they usually do, is over $1 billion.
Wow, and that's when it's really just in the hands of scientists. If you make it this cheap, ostensibly more people will flood the market.
And I really think that synthetic DNA will become a consumer product. That people will write code and start two-people companies with $50,000 and build great businesses just by having access to low-cost DNA. We're going to see people programming life forms at scale and doing it very quickly. We are absolutely 100% as a species reliant on the development of this technology. Life in the long term is not sustainable unless we can direct its future outcome.
Once experts have this full sequence of the virus. Notably, that blueprint can end up in a place like this.
Yeah, I mean, this is the exact typical order we get. It's a bunch of A, C, G, and T. And for us on our machine, we can print anything. So if you want hemoglobin today, we can print hemoglobin. If you want chicken DNA, if you want coronavirus DNA, we can do it.
Twist Bioscience is a biotech company in South San Francisco that builds custom DNA to order. As the coronavirus outbreak progresses, scientists around the world are turning to companies like Twist to build copies of viral genes for urgent study. And they're sending in lots of orders.
We expected that there will be a number of demands for variants of the coronavirus to help in that discovery of drugs, vaccines, and diagnostic kits. And whatever comes from the web tonight, we'll start making tomorrow.
Custom-built DNA has been around since the 1980s, but the technology has gotten dramatically cheaper and easier since then. So researchers today have a lot more DNA at their disposal than they did during the SARS or MERS outbreaks.
If you go back to 2000, it would take $10 for make one base of DNA. In 2010, it will make $1, so 10 times more. And today, it's 9 cents per base, so again, 10 times more.
That's important because this kind of research requires a lot of trial and error. So the more copies of a gene scientists have, the better.
So it's biology. And in biology, it almost never works on the first time. You have to take a lot of shots on goals to get there. We give people the opportunity to take more shots on goals faster. And that way they can get to that answer faster.
There's a few things scientists do with this genetic material. It can help create tests to screen patients for the virus. It can help researchers understand how the virus works and what it does to cells in the body. And crucially, it could be used in the development of vaccines. One important note, even though companies like Twist are churning out copies of the coronavirus genome, there's no concern they'll accidentally start an epidemic. They're not actually making the virus.
I think one thing that people should remember is that nature is the biggest bioterrorist. Nature wants to kill you. And that's what happens with the coronavirus. So the virus is out there. The sequence is out there. So we are not creating more virus. We are making fragments of the virus to researchers in order to enable them to find tools to detect it and tools to fight it.
And the keys to the kingdom are these tiny, tiny data files. That is an excerpt of H5N1's genome. The whole thing can fit on just a few pages. And yeah, don't worry, you can Google it as soon as you get home. It's all over the internet, right? And the part that made it contagious could well fit on a single Post-it note. And once a genius makes a data file, any idiot can copy it, distribute it worldwide, or print it. And I don't just mean print it on this, but soon enough on this. So let's imagine a scenario. Let's say it's 2026, to pick an arbitrary year, and a brilliant virologist hoping to advance science and better understand pandemics designs a new bug. It's as contagious as chickenpox, it's as deadly as Ebola, and it incubates for months and months before causing an outbreak, so the whole world can be infected before the first sign of trouble. Then, her university gets hacked, and of course this is not science fiction. In fact, just one recent US indictment documents the hacking of over 300 universities. So that file with the bug's genome on it spreads to the internet's dark corners. And once a file's out there, it never comes back. Just ask anybody who runs a movie studio or a music label. So now maybe in 2026, it would take a true genius like our virologist to make the actual living critter. But 15 years later, it may just take a DNA printer you can find at any high school. And if not, Give it a couple of decades. So, a quick aside, remember this slide here? Turn your attention to these two words. If somebody tries this and is only 0.1% effective, 8 million people die, that's 2,500 9/11s. Civilization would survive, but it would be permanently disfigured.
Wow, that looks just like Frank.
Yeah.
Best of the best, right?
Okay, let's try it. Unlock the phone.
Okay. Here we go. I'm in. Look at this. These are all the cities where the virus was deployed.
Wait, but how is the virus deployed simultaneously in all of those places?
Oh my God.
I know I wasn't supposed to use a 3D printer at work.
In Berlin, at the German Ministry of Technology. In Sao Paulo, at the Computer Center.
Serious virus is now being reported in Sao Paulo.
All of the infection sites.
Tel Aviv and Sao Paulo.
Johannesburg,
Berlin,
Tel Aviv, Vancouver. All of these places had one thing in common. Owen.
Indoor toilets.
No, think.
3D printers.
This model 3D printer. Glenn, why did you choose this model 3D printer?
Well, it's the best of the best. I mean, you can literally print anything.
Even a virus.
Well, that's dumb. I mean, nobody's going to pay me money to print a virus. You know, grandkids with rockin' bodies. I mean, that's a niche market.
I remember reading an article once about the future of artificial viruses. The science was sound, but the technology was years away. Looks like the tech finally caught up.
That twin of a bitch. He transmitted the viral code into that model 3D printer. And that's how the virus popped up simultaneously all over the world.
I just wonder why Neri only infected 5 cities.
Uh-oh.
What?
Phase 2.
Oh my God, a new wave of attacks.
Excuse me, sir. Would you mind letting me have a look at the contents of your bag, please? Me?
Excuse me.
Biological samples. I have the papers right here. Now, I'm going to have to ask you to open this up, sir. Open it?
Well, yes, of course.
What could be better? Come on, look over here. Look at the planes. Hurry up.
Excuse me, man. You have to get in the line.
See? Biological. Check the papers. It's all proper. Have a permit. It's empty. Well, yes, to be sure. It looks empty. I assure you it's not.
You don't understand. No, ma'am, I don't have to understand. You but you have to get very important. There's a man. I understand that you cannot get out.
There, you see? Also invisible to the naked eye. It doesn't even have an odor. That's not necessary, sir. There you go. Thank you for your cooperation. Have a good flight.
The darkest places in hell are reserved for those who refuse to act in time of crisis. Dante's hell isn't fiction anymore, it's prophecy. We have created our own hell on Earth. Oh my. The warnings have been obvious, the solutions ignored, so I took action. If you're watching this, it means the Inferno virus was released last night at midnight and is now being carried to every corner of the Earth. Within 6 days of its release, the virus will replicate itself in every man, woman, and child on Earth. Expect the current population to be culled by half. The survivors will witness horrors unknown to this planet. But I want them to know why. That this was our doing, and this is our salvation.